Investment Summit in Arawa, this government has also embarked on an initiative to improve the rule of law. This operation has yielded considerable success, but we recognize that there is more to do to improve business confidence and the order of relationships among all Bougainvilleans. This is a long-term project, and we must remain focused on this agenda. I wish you fruitful discussions and also look forward to seeing the results of your deliberations to improve the rule of law in Bougainville. Kami Liglig rule of law. As you may recall, 3 months ago, Bougainville, in terms of rule of law, ay may mo down law mo na binoglo pakarapit. At government, executive government, will recognize him. Work importance the rule of law na link ng economic recovery from creating sila conducive environment. So executive government nila approving this operation challenge. Nila approving operation challenge with to drive at Liglig where we were conducting this operation throughout the region, and after that known criminals they are behind bars today. We got a big arrest throughout the region on Monday of law on heavy on big name criminals of Bougainville. Only Pula said today. And this is the commitment that we this government have to try to improve it. Not the big decision long executive government may making big decision long selling all these law criminals. Only kising big time law or sentencing long all. Bigla by selling all igor of terror. Na selling all igor not the change law pa ni. Because many time you look at good lahap long para ko symbolis law line, you go back to the community. Na tamli go back to the community, then only continue law pakarapin. So one time this big work, big decision government making, I think there is now stability in the region, and we wish to maintain that stability in the region. Now, momentum is building this. The problem also is people that are in Sabre, and people need money and not sustain it. Money to sustain it, now people are building report for government, that finding way of sustaining this operation by continuing. Or people are finding way how long addressing law and order all the consequences. Bougainville and Liglig plus. But we may stop ourselves. Whilst government we can take more initiative to improve conditions for economic development to take place, we need the support of the community. We need the support of the business community as well. Now, man na very blessed, people are needed. Because we cannot just sit back na tokol sa law and order and people are heavy. Na people are blaming government, no one. Nanti time, you mean, hindi bisa meron ni Golo Police, na hindi kat heavy kasol. Hindi bisa meron ni Golo Police, na hindi bisa kat heavy kasol. Tapi no bungin heavy, you don't consider law and order any important. So ito kasi may state ownership of law and order. Bigat money start lo community employee. O money katkan lo community employee na ibisa sa miyo lo katkan na lo terrorizing community employee. The community, the leaders within that community must move to disarm that man who got gun long community na terrorizing community. Hindi ka right. The sanap to like maybe disarm mo kunti mo liguro sa saling government ng this law operation challenge where we play approving this. So Islam long stressing the importance that me as a minister long all projects we long try to implement in long north, south and central. We are not able to implement those economic projects for the benefit of the people because why? ikatol people no for the issues ikama. Kung la project we implementing long South Bougainville isla timba project empin go pagarat long isla kain passing. So not a big issue. While law and order is an impediment to progress on economic development, let me add here that land is also another big issue on Bougainville. While addressing law and order, economic development, we must also address land owner issues in Bougainville because all the economic development projects kami pelaksanakan anta long ground, so mito konsep. Let's address law and order issues. Most one lang we must addressing to land owner issues so that we can progress economic development projects for our people and try find ways of how we can improve our people's well-being or creating more economic opportunities so that we provide employment for our people, not only our youth, but the people who can actually contribute the way no more long workforce training. But with that, I'm very happy to be here as the minister responsible, and I will now take this opportunity to officially declare this forum open.
It is a real pleasure to come back to Bougainville. This is my 8th year. I really enjoy working here and being on the journey with you. I realise that I am a guest and I always receive a very warm welcome. Thank you for that. I hope it's okay if I say we when I talk about the journey that we're on. I hope that's acceptable. I look forward to these sessions more than any other part of my job. And that's because it's a chance for the businesses and the government to get together and iron out some of these issues, really important issues for Bougainville's journey. And we started this initially with the summit in Arawa, and there's been a commitment to hold more forums as part of Bougainville's transition. So we always reflect on how far Bougainville has come, in 20, 30 years or so. And there's a need to really accelerate that progress as we continue the journey that we're on. We've made a very strong statement over the desire for political independence, and we recognise the importance of economic independence. And the topic today on the rule of law is really at the centre of that. It focuses on the institutions, the relationships within Bougainville, and even outside of Bougainville, and the trust that there is for efficiency. So that there's more investment, there's greater level of transactions, there's more tax, there's better income for our people. And so this is the journey that we're on. I'm going to talk a little bit about the roadmap that came out of the Economic Summit. People sometimes ask what's been happening since. So I'd like to answer that first. We went through a drafting process based on the recommendations of the summit. There was discussions among Alex and his colleague secretaries in the economic sector, and we drafted a roadmap which will help us move towards that goal of fiscal self-reliance in a phased approach. We tested it with businesses at the last forum in February, and the roadmap received, I would say, a strong level of support from business houses. But that's not to say it's perfect, right? Sometimes implementation may be delayed, there's always areas to improve. And lots of these elements of the roadmap were already being implemented. There's some new areas. This forum is one element, the rule of law is another. As the VP has mentioned, there is a need to better manage our expenditure, to do more almost with less, with the resources that we have. There's also a need to increase internally generated revenue. Lots of those sources of revenue at the moment are untapped. Tuna license fees, for example, tax, there's others as well. While also thinking about welfare of Bougainvillians. Okay? So we're not tapping unsustainable sources of revenue to meet short-term goals. We have to take a long-term perspective. And thinking about what lessons can be learned from 20 years of autonomy that we can take forward to improve the effectiveness of our actions. The roadmap, this slide, is very small for you all, but it's in the handout I provided, so please do reference that. The goal on revenue is to cover the recurrent budget. This is the salaries, the ongoing expenses of the ABG from the tuna initially. Okay? Now, we know under the peace agreement arrangements that the tuna revenue should be shared, and that's a key part of the transition. Also considering a tax system that is relevant to Bougainville's needs. We've heard a lot about how complicated the tax system is. Think about the role of SOEs and joint venture investments. That's the revenue side. And on the expenditure side, thinking through how we can do more with almost the same amount of money or even less. So we need to be a lot more efficient in the way the government operates, focusing on effectiveness, and strengthen our budget and policy processes. And then on investment climate reform, the VP also mentioned reducing the costs and risk facing businesses so that our local businesses can invest more, they have more confidence, and international investors where that is agreeable, but with a focus on responsible human investment. So these are the components of the roadmap in like 2 phases, if you like, and there's progress on many areas of the roadmap. Okay, so I'm just going to talk through on revenue an update from John Auna, the Secretary for Treasury and Finance. He can't be here with us today. I'll just pull it up from my phone. Okay, so on the formulation of a wealth fund to safeguard the proceeds from natural resource extraction. This is at an early stage of design with the Department of Mining, Energy, and that is progressing. So we might have a forum like this on that topic in the future. Alois State and the Commission of the Tax have been on a trip around Bougainville last week to do with the formulation of a tax system for Bougainville. For many smaller businesses amongst you, the idea is to make it a lot easier to pay tax. Okay? And only for the larger business maintaining the existing corporation, GST, etc. But that recognises also that there's a need to increase confidence among businesses that tax will be spent efficiently and effectively. The Tax for Service Charter is also included in that package approved by the BEC, and that talks about restricting the fines that are currently implemented on businesses so that you just start paying the tax without the fines. And formulate other revenue streams, and the BEC has approved concept notes on fuel user tax, superannuation fund, and also lottery business. On the expenditure side, there is great progress, which I'm happy to report from John. The cost of services study, there was a team here last week from the National Economic and Fiscal Commission, and that is being implemented. The desktop review was conducted by NEFC and the ABG. The formulation of the one-line budget system, there's a joint task force following up with CoPNG for clarification and implementation. For the implementation of safeguards to corruption and wastage, the Auditor General's Office is now open here and is operational, and there's an EU-European Union agreement to conduct an expenditure financial accountability assessment of the ABG's public financial management systems. That will provide a lot of entry points to improve public financial management here in Bougainville. And finally, strengthen budget and policy processes to prioritise efficiency, effectiveness and equity. The draft finance management manual is in progress for completion and adoption in 2023. The European Union is providing assistance to strengthen government accounting systems and governance.
We have 3 strategies here. Firstly, having enabling governance framework for programs. Under this, we are tracking different policies. We have the SOE track policy. It's a comprehensive policy that is ready now for us. We have consultation with the stakeholders, including the private sector. Also, we are working on the SME policy. SME policy is different from SOE policy. That's another policy we are working on. Business reserve list. This is the one we are expecting to give us instructions to finalize hopefully next month. So we'll also have a consultation with the business community. So we'll appreciate the support if we can provide input in the reserve list. We want to finalize that list. So that's one area. We also have cooperative societies legislation, also training manual. We're also rolling out So that's one area. The other area is in terms of Inward Investment Act. That one we implemented. Board, particularly for us to have a board, we have sent out invitation for new board members. So we already identified about 5 members so that they will join the board again. The whole one, their term expired, so we're going to get new board members so we can continue with our role in terms of ensuring we invite foreigners coming in. We get the right people to come and do business in Bougainville. In terms of industrial development and promotion, firstly, tourism products promotion, this one is continuing activity for us. We are working on that. The other thing is commercial aspects of Balsa. And I have my minister here. I think yesterday, DC decision, we're going to establish Balsa industry in the region. So we'll be looking at securing some money so that we can establish factories, one for the 3 regions each. But we need to do some sort of negotiation also. Funding is one another aspect. So real Balsa is one area we think that's sort of part of the low-hanging fruit. Downstream processing, we are working with TPI in terms of cocoa and coconut. Some industry we need to work on. Labor mobility is one area. We think that labor mobility could contribute in terms of remittance to the region. We have so far, we have a stock list. By June, we should send 30 Bougainvilleans to Australia to work on the farms, and then they sort of send money back to the region. The value of that is around 2 million. That's for 30 people. And hopefully by end of the year, we should be able to send 100 or so. You're already looking at some millions through that program. But we thankful to the Australian government for allowing us to participate. So we have a separate scheme for the region. The other one is special economic zone. This is one of the important area. We attended the International Economic Summit in Mosby 2 weeks ago. So we're going to submit a busy submission through our minister so that we can identify certain areas, particular areas that are owned by the government, so that we can invite maybe government to government or private sector to come and establish industries. Foreigners to establish industry, so we call it free trade zone. It depends on the sites that we allocate. For example, in Wakuna could be agriculture, as he said there, or not, we can say tourism. So these are the different types of activities we can establish under. It will go through a long process. We need to ensure the national government will support us. Apart from that, we are inviting the professor from Japan to come over to the feasibility study and then report back to the national government. So we sought that approval from Minister Maru. He assured us that the professor from Japan will come and do feasibility study in the region, and following that he will recommend which sites, but then it will come through the government to approve those sites. So this one, it's sort of impact project that we are looking at. In terms of our international relations, like we always say, our minister said, foreign relations powers is still with the national government. But for us, we have flexibilities under peace agreement and Bougainville peace agreement and constitution to participate in international trade or economic. So that is one area that I think 3 weeks ago, the minister did a conference, media conference for us to say Bougainville is open for business. We inviting countries to establish mission here, or we are looking at establishing mission abroad if we have resources, provided we have that consent approval from the national government. So everything we do, we still part of national government, so we have to go through them. But we are going to do those things so that we can build our economy. So briefly, these are some of the things we are working on. Thank you.
I realise for businesses here, rule of law is important, but so is power. I hope that our next forum will be on this power issue. Anthony Corrie isn't with us here today, but I understand from him that he's in negotiations with PNG Power. So at our next forum, we're going to invite someone from PNG Power to come here and to identify how we can really progress this matter for all the businesses and the families as well. There's always plans to invest in infrastructure, and Anthony will be able to update us on that. Investment in agriculture, this is the backbone of many household income across Bougainville, and the donor partners and also ABG with BAPCRA is engaged in this space. There has been a visit from an insurance provider, and I believe there is momentum to establish a provider of insurance here in Bougainville. We're going to continue holding these mini forums. It's a pleasure to support them. And there are also plans through a 20-year plan to think about elements of our future business environment. This will help to build and maintain business confidence here in Bougainville. So I hope you can agree with me that there is progress on this roadmap in different areas. Some areas faster than others. Some areas are mission critical, that is a Chile issue. Some will be a longer burn, like the tax system, for example. But across all three pillars, there is progress, which I'm delighted to share with you. It'd be great to get some feedback if anyone would like to talk about elements of the roadmap that are particularly important to you or where you think it could be improved before we jump into topics of the rule of law.
Well, talking about general development in business, you mentioned that large-scale investment is unproductive. You said that large-scale investment is unproductive. Can we elaborate on that?
Sure. Thank you very much for coming back to me on that. I was referring to it in the context of jurisdictions that have gone through crisis. So the large-scale investments like the plantations and the Panguna mine remain unproductive. Now you could argue that the plantations are productive because they're producing cocoa at the moment and there's some evidence of alluvial mining there.
Yeah, secured interest from capital insurance. So we finalized the MOU now. Soon we'll sign an MOU with them and they can establish their branch in Bougainville. So insurance is one of the important areas that we are working on at the moment. Thank you.
Now, when we first published this advert for this forum, the first comment on the Bougainville forum was very interesting. It said, why are we not talking about law and order? You know, the rule of law is the government's business. I don't think I agree with that, okay? These are two similar but very different things, okay? They're in the same space, but there is difference between them, okay? Now, it's important that we get a hold of this, so it's in the handout that you have, so please do reflect back on it. In essence, the rule of law, the rules create the order between us in our relationships, okay? There is equality before the law, okay? It promotes judicial institutions. That means there's fairness in the implementation of the law through the judiciary. People are free to make their own decisions within the behaviour of the law. And the relationships amongst all of us are disciplined and are balanced. Now, law and order, in the literature that I've come across, is slightly different, okay? It's more top-down. It's less about equality before the law, and it's more about orders for behaviour, okay? So I think there's opportunity to think, what is the Bougainville way as we transition, as we continue our journey, which one suits us and our custom and our history better? A pathway that is of the rule of law, or one that is of law and order, which is commands for order, some sense of subordination, not so much equality before the law, one that prioritizes administrative police institutions and has more direct involvement in people's lives, or under the rule of law, one that is more based on freedom under accepted norms. Okay? You clear? So similar but different. And the title of this forum was chosen with that in mind, thinking about the difference. And we'll hear more about this, I think, in the future from the Department of Justice and also from our colleagues from the business associations. So just quickly, what is a law? It prescribes a right, allows you to do something, protects that ability to do something, farming, going to the market on Saturday mornings, whatever it might be, while also regulating behaviour. Yeah, you can go to a market, but you know, don't take things without paying for them, that kind of stuff. Our enterprises, individuals, and even governments, we're subject to law. So a body of law in Bougainville comprises of international law, which informs national law, Papua New Guinea law. Also, we have our own constitution, which is a very positive thing for Bougainville to have. You have Papua New Guinea primary and secondary legislation, but also you have Bougainvillean primary and secondary legislation. And importantly, you have this customary law, the informal norms within the communities that prescribes the right, yes, you can do this, but X, Y, Z under certain conditions. And there's this relationship between the customary law and the formal law that is constantly evolving. And so the two regulate the behaviour or prescribe a right. Okay. Now, when I was back home in April, I was thinking about this statement. This comes from Papua New Guinea's national anthem. We're independent and we're free, Papua New Guinea. Okay? Now, my sense is because of the vote that you've had, this is somewhere you want to be as well. Okay? I was thinking very carefully about the relationship between we are independent and we are free. Are they different things? Are they the same thing? How do we balance out the two? So, I was thinking about it, I had a long conversation with my children about it. We didn't quite get to the bottom of it, okay? But for me, when I come here, one of the things that I see and I appreciate is how free it is here, okay? Now, one can say that it is self-regulated, okay? The laws are not all the laws are implemented and enforced. In some ways, you're self-regulated. But I understand that that comes into kind of customary norms. So this is shown by inward investment norms in Bougainville Island. Yeah? There's not that many retail investments there outside of Bougainville. That's an example of kind of self-regulation, if you like. For me, that's really interesting to see. Okay? But there's a lot of informal businesses around that are not paying tax. The building regulations are not enforced or applied, and that creates problems if there's an earthquake. You have to look at Turkey, Nepal, where I worked after the earthquake, and product standards, road safety, etc. Okay, so it's a large informal economy. Customary law applies, but there are laws, formal rules, that aren't implemented or enforced fully. Now, if we're on this journey of being politically independent, there's certain standards we need to meet, so we need to be recognised by the states through the United Nations, a permanent population in a defined area, constitution, head of state, government. All this stuff is to do with the formal rules. So when I was thinking about we are independent and we are free, this is the conclusion I came to. Okay? We have the freedom of individuals and enterprises, unregulated. Yeah? We're completely free, we can do what we like. And we have Bougainville's future independence. And I sense, my feeling is that this is a bit of a balancing act. Okay? So if we're yearning for political independence, if this is what we want, then in some ways we need to give up some of these freedoms. This sense of being unregulated. Yeah? So in essence, if we have rules for order, judicial institutions, decisions based on rules and relationships and disciplines being balanced, then we might give some of the freedoms up to be recognised by the states, have our defined area, constitution, government, etc., etc. I realise it's more complicated than that, but I think that this is important to get across that as we strive for this political independence, maybe some things need to change in terms of the formal regulation of the activities. That's the basic message. So then I started reading what the United Nations, we talked about them before, what the United Nations definition is of the rule of law. Okay? So under their definition, all people, everyone, leaders, businesses, you name it, people in the villages, entities, public and private, and the state are accountable to laws that are, and this goes back to our story of King Rex. They are published and people can understand them. Okay, they are equally enforced. That means no one is above the law. Okay? All countries are on a journey with this one. And I'll give you some examples later from my own country. Okay? They're independently adjudicated, and I think there's great progress in this area. We're going to hear from Devastator later about strengthening the court system here in Bougainville. And what is different from the United Nations and King Rights, the United Nations say they're consistent with human rights norms. Okay? Now the United Nations goes on. It says the rule of law is fundamental, i.e. this means you can't have these things unless the rule of law is applied. You cannot have international peace without the rule of law. You cannot have economic and social development without the rule of law. And you cannot protect people's rights without the rule of law. It also says it's foundational for, is one of many things that are important for, access to public services. People cry out here for make sure that hospitals have drugs and stuff. It would be great to have a discussion over what the Bougainville way is, okay? Because under autonomy and your journey that you're on, you can choose your own path in many areas of society, politics, and the economy. And this really, I think, is the purpose of today's discussions. And at the end of it this afternoon, I hope we can come up with a medium-term action plan, some agreed actions that we can take. It's not just government, it's also society, business houses, to improve the rule of law. But this is a long-term project. This is not click your fingers and it's done. Okay? Every jurisdiction that I know keeps a very close eye on this topic. And countries sometimes, they ebb and they flow on how they're making progress. If we can maintain the trajectory we've come through in the last 30 years or so, I believe the future is good. I'd love to take some questions or comments.
In my own experience, in my less than 12 months as town manager, people know the rules and regulations, town rules and regulations. And, as soon as you begin to enforce the rules and regulations, in this instance, relating to the management of an urban setting, you'll be amazed at the level of compliance. So I think for me, the biggest problem with law and order in Bougainville is lack of knowledge about the laws. It's basically inconsistency, lack of enforcement, I don't get an unlawful attitude by state agencies that are responsible for enforcing all aspects of the rule of law. So, that's my only comment for a start. I believe if the ABC in this instance, undertakes an aggressive drive towards ensuring that the state agencies have the capacity, or even if they have the capacity, they're simply not doing their job. So, for me personally, I reckon that this is where the problem is. Anyway, one of the problems in relation to the enforcement of the rule of law.
I'm always really impressed. Like, for example, on the Veterans Day you had Wednesday, there was, this is a really strong example of customary rules, I guess, mixing with the formal rules. When there's a liquor ban, for example, some things seem to get implemented and followed very, very, very strongly. And some things fall by the wayside. So there's an interesting story there to investigate. Why is it some things seem to work really well and other things not so well? And it's, as Mr. Somoza alluded to, is probably a combination of factors. But what's really interesting for me is that if some things are implemented really easily and well and effectively, and some are not, what lessons can we learn? And do we need to focus on particular areas of the law where it's possible for people to follow the law, where enforcement costs are reasonable, where people know, and critically for me, this idea of equality before the law. If some people see other people not following the law and not being punished for it, especially leaders, I must say, then it's, we're challenged in how we're going to make progress. Thank you so much for sharing.
I'll begin my presentation with a question. Why do we care about rule of law in Bougainville? why is it rule of law such an important topic for us to discuss today? Not only today after this and when I also blind, why do we care about rule of law in Bougainville? I want to make reference to you all by presenting you what the Bougainville Constitution talk about rule of law in Bougainville. If you have a time after this, you go back and if you have a copy of Bougainville Constitution, you take that and you look at section 9, subsection 1 and paragraph I of the Bougainville Constitution. It says, a Bougainvillian has an obligation to promote rule of law and democracy in Bougainville. So when you talk about rule of law, you talk about democracy. When you talk about democracy, you talk about rule of law. So the Bougainville Constitution call on every Bougainvillian to promote rule of law and democracy in Bougainville. So it's such an important topic for us today to talk about. I continue on with a quote from Pawanigi Supreme Court case. This decision was made in relation to an issue that was brought before the court, and it was in the commercial case. So the Supreme Court in that case said, I quote, individual and corporation conduct their affairs, business and daily lives according to law as it exists from time to time. This is the essence of rule of law. Another quote I want to present to you is from Rowley. He said, when the rule of law is undermined, both the economic and the whole system goes sick. So if you relate the first quote with the second quote, it gives us the overview of why we want to talk about rule of law in Bougainville. So under rule of law, as it relates to economic sector, I will talk about 5 areas. And one of these areas is clarity and predictability. Why is it important to have a law that is predictable and clear to everyone? That is there. Because we need to have a law that is clear so everyone knows that this is what law says and this is what I need to do as an individual, as a corporation. And if I don't follow this law, this is the consequence that I saw. We are aware of what the law is. So this is what the rule of law promotes in economic sector. So business houses know that this is the law that I have to follow. If I don't follow this law, this is what I get. So they plan according to the law and they operate according to the law. So example I want to present it to you is the Bougainville Investment Act. Every business houses in the Bougainville, operating in Bougainville know about this law. Is it clear? That is a question that we must ask. And if we don't really know about this law, rule of law requires us that it has to be clear. Everyone must know this law and operate their business, conduct their affairs according to this law. And the other is Investment Promotion Authority Act. This act and Bougainville Act are similar. They operate in similar. But the issue is, are we following the Bougainville Investment Act or are we following the Bougainville Investment Act? If there is inconsistency between this law, the rule of law says we have to get this law and apply one law that is clear to us. We understand it. So that's something that rule of law emphasizes on. Law has to be clear, there has to be consistency in its application, and people must understand this. The other example I want to take on the investment promotion, there is a recent amendment that requires that every business that registered prior to the amendment must re-register through online system. So if you do not register through that online system, you will be registered. Once you're registered, you have no legal power to operate. So whether this law is consistent and people understand this law, that is what rule of law talks about. It has to be consistent. Everyone has to understand this. every business houses must operate according to these laws. Company said, PNG company said, it's also been amended. Is it consistent? People are aware of how this law operates? And tax laws too. There has been many recent amendments on tax law, company income, corporate income tax and all this. Do people really aware of what these laws are? This is what the rule of law says. There has to be change in law, it has to be consistent, people have to understand, people have to predict that if we don't follow this, this is what we're going to get. The other thing the rule of law emphasizes or promotes in the economic sector is equality, fairness, and legal protection. This is important. We have issue with business being not being treated fairly. Like, for example, foreign businesses and local businesses. There is discrimination with the treatment of this law. The law promote local and then discriminate. But the rule of law says, no, everyone in the economic sector must be treated fairly, equally. And their asset, their investment must be also protected. This is what rule of law says. My example is tax regime. This is one of the areas that have problem with investments. Our tax regime has to be fair and it must be applied equally to every participant in the economic sector. Like example, the company's income tax on company for foreign business in PNG is 48% as compared to local business is 30%. Is it fair? That's a question we must ask. Or the rule of law says it's not fair, we have to get it right. Encourage investment, we have to treat everyone fairly. Tax law has to be fair. The third point I want to talk about is business and investment, business confidence. This is important and it comes back to the rule of law. A country that demonstrates strong commitment to rule of law sends a positive signal to potential investors and leading to increased investment, flows, job creation and economic growth. It comes back to rule of law. We have to promote rule of law. We have to show that Bougainville promotes rule of law and then we will see people will come in and say that if we invest in this place, our properties, our investment will be protected because of rule of law. So that's why we want to promote rule of law by giving business investors a confidence that look, Bougainville is a favorable place for you to come and invest. Your investment will be safe. You will get return on your investment. That's why we want to promote rule of law in the economic sector. Example, like companies' law must be applied consistently. Example, IPA, like I mentioned previously, companies like Bougainville Investment Act. This law has to provide safe environment, make sure that the investors coming in gonna invest in has to be protected and their investment has to be secured. And this law must make sure that they provide such environment for investors to come in and invest. Other thing is tax regime. This is important. I will emphasize again. Our tax regime, we have to balance it out. We have to look at the investors' interest and our interest and our development aspiration and have a tax regime that will promote and encourage everyone to invest in the business, economic sector. The fourth thing I want to talk about is dispute resolution and contract enforcement. Contract is an important part of business transaction. Contract goes at the heart of business operation. So if there is an issue with the contract, how do we settle those disputes? So it comes back to the dispute settlement mechanism. And rule of law promotes that business must have access to independent and impartial judicial system that can help them settle their dispute. So for us to say that we have an independent impartial judicial system, it comes to us to respect the work of the court officials, judges, magistrates, police officers, respect the job they are doing to uphold our to show that our judicial system is impartial. So we as an individual, as a citizen, have to respect the work they are doing. Let them do their job. Let God do their job. So in that way, we are telling the investors that, look, we have respect to our judicial system, which is impartial and can deal with your issue if you have an issue with your investment or contract enforcement or something. So it's come back to us as a citizen to show that the institution that is responsible for upholding and enforcing rule of law do their job, and we respect their job or what they are doing to contribute to the rule of law and provide a safe and safer community for investment. Anti-corruption measures. Rule of law strongly emphasizes anti-corruption measures. This is one of the areas that we all can agree that it has such an impact on the economic development and even all aspects of our life in the government system. So we have the rule of law emphasize that we have to have a strong anti-corruption mechanism that will go after those individuals and corporations that involved in corrupt practices.
I think to establish the full rule of law in Bougainville has to be a contributed activity from all of us, right from our national members in Papua New Guinea Parliament, coming down to ABG, then implementation through the administration on the ground, and then our communities back in the villages, and towards the innocent citizens under the community. There I see a lot of missing gap, a missing gap where, you know, we can freely go abide by the law. I should say, if I recall back to the old colonial time, as usual, that is what is missing today. Even in the community, we don't support the traditional authority, where the chiefs should be given freedom to exercise their powers in the community. And I think there we should ask ourselves questions. Where are we failing? Whether I'm from the community failed, or whether am I the law enforcement organization that I failed, or maybe I'm a politician up in the national parliament. Am I contributing towards establishment of the full rule of law in Bougainville? I can say some activities that goes against the law in Bougainville some are caused by the parliamentarians, some are caused by the administration. I've got facts. Like as earlier, someone here, the president mentioned the logging issue in Buin. He said that's another economic failure for Bougainville. But establishment of the logging down there without proper consultation. It was just like putting more firewood over a fire which was already there, especially the issue in the Kono area. There's no other citizens should be blamed for this. I think the parliamentarians should be blamed for this. And this is where we could understand, and then we combine together towards establishing the full legal right, full of rule of law. Another thing is the veterans. I think the veterans should reintegrate back into the community. And it has to be abide by a legislative policy, not just giving them gago and say, oh, you go back to the community. Really, our veterans, we are not like other developed countries like America or like what is happening up with Russia and Ukraine. America is deploying soldiers going down there. These veterans, they have continuous veterans rehabilitation in this sort. But in Bougainville, if we come up with legal measures to reintegrate our veterans, we should set up a legislative policy to go about with. Because I can talk from fact. Previously, after post-crisis, I was one of those who was called to manage the project called the Beta. That is where Australian government have allocated 10 million kina for us to manage. This is for ex-combatants to be given cargo to set up their business. But on the other side, there was nothing to abide with. It's just a matter of throwing things into the rubbish bin.